I'm just now learning because I want to stay in business and I want to increase my brand, how to use the internet. And I feel like I'm on the cutting edge of a lot of things. But I'm like, okay, I'm on the cutting edge of a lot of things, and I've been checking my email and going on MySpace for a couple of years, But I mean, about really utilizing it and drawing traffic, like creating my own website, drawing traffic to it, and just that type of stuff. That's really where my head is at now. And I guess what you hear from me is, I can't say what resources teachers not using, but I know what resources I haven't been using as someone who's not just a hip-hop artist, but a hip-hop artist who's considered to be the voice of the community, or the voice of activism. So it's like, okay, when we had the Nkiru, we had those people around us, but we weren't utilizing it. Now we have the internet, there's no excuse for not connecting with those people. Back then when I was working at Nkiru, maybe 10 years ago, it was a real issue of like, okay, well, people had to get off work. Can you make it to the meeting? And if you're going to be on the board of directors, can you really be here for the meeting? And now we can Skype, like there's a lot of things that have changed that I think that we can utilize.
Questions on the side?
Hi, I just had a question about, you mentioned sort of the commodification of the gangster image, if you will. And I wondered, do you have any concerns or any thoughts about, as the community is moving towards becoming more responsive to positive hip-hop, if you will, if I give it the classification, is there a fear or a thought at all that the positive message will become commercialized as well, sort of, like if you remember when identifying Africa was the in thing, like McDonald's had a take-off cup or plastic cup or something like that.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts or any ideas about now that positive hip-hop is getting more airplay or the message is getting out there, it too may become commercialized and we lose authenticity with people?
Yeah, I mean, I think, gangster rap, NWA was a response and a reaction to images like Public Enemy and De La Soul. And those things were commodified to a certain degree to where you had a few good groups. You had KRS-One, you had X-Clan, you had Public Enemy, but then you had a lot of people who just had African names or Muslim-sounding names that just was whack, and just like, you had a lot of like conscious rappers who was eating pork. Just a lot of that type of stuff, and so that's what NWA came out of, and that's just the nature of art. Art is not supposed to be. Art, by definition, doesn't have to be responsible. It can be, and when it is, it's beautiful. But some of the best art in the world is irresponsible. So I don't put that on hip hop. I put that on people like myself who know better. The difference between me and somebody like a 50 Cent is, my parents are college professors. And 50 Cent, his mother got shot when he was 12. And she was selling crack. And our music, the music we made has reflected that. So I wouldn't want to stop his expression or I wouldn't want to not have that in hip hop. I just want to see more of a balance. The problem is not that those things are not being created, but some of the gangster stuff is a lot more sexy and easier to sell on the surface level. So, that's the country we live in. It's like, and I recognize that. But it's our job as people who know better to not get caught up in that and to be able to see past that and say, okay, well that may be with the whole country, but we have to understand that that's not what represents hip hop. And I'm talking about image-wise, because 50 Cent loves hip hop. That's why he makes it like he's one of the, me and him use the same producers, DJ High Tech, which was from 50 Cent too. So we have a lot more in common than the differences. And when I get in settings like this, I try to stress what we have in common.
I think we have one right over here. Behind you.
Hi. I just want to say, for one, I love you. I've been listening to you since Black Star. My dad introduced me to you. Thank you. My question is, I understand the importance of gangster rap and its message orientated hip hop. Do you think now that message orientated hip hop is becoming more popular and getting on the rise? That would feel actually that the impact on hip hop is not.
It's interesting. This is like the 4th time that somebody has said that message hip hop is becoming more popular. Y'all really feel like that? For real? I'm just asking, I'm just curious, because I'm hearing that. That's not something I hear that often, that's why I'm asking. But I'm hearing it from y'all.
You talking about conscious rap or rap in general?
Just conscious hip hop.
Oh, most definitely. You're
You said
here
that,
right
you
now.
said that
You're here right now. You performed here a couple, last year, a year.
3 years ago.
Okay, that's
I
My
think,
daughter loves you
Oh,
versus
that's
over
beautiful.
50 Cent and other artists like that. So I would say yes.
that's beautiful. I mean, I think what you have when it comes to your question, you have a generation that sees through it. You know, in politics, you had a generation that saw through sort of the tricks of the Republican Party. Some of those tricks that they pulled this year would have worked 3-4 years ago, I think. And now you have a newer generation that was like, oh, that's hogwash. Right? And so you have the same thing in hip hop. I think Kanye West is an artist who had a lot to do with that. He's had an incredible influence on hip hop and hip hop artists, because the whole gangster thing, there was a time when like street credibility was a realistic like where artists were like, oh man, I don't listen to because he don't got enough street credibility. Like, really? Really? You know, but now it's, I mean, it's a little different. Like when I hear a record like a Kid Cudi record, right? Which is Day and Night, which I don't even know where Kid Cudi's from. You know? He's from Cleveland? Alright. His records sound good. The record, it does not sound like a hip hop beat. The way he dresses is not like your average everyday hip hop fan on the street. He dresses more like a downtown sort of hipster type of dude, you know. What he's talking about is a stoner record. He's talking about smoking weed in the record. But it's a little bit more poetic and esoteric than just like, yeah, I smoke every day. You know, it's a little bit more introspective. It's a little bit more sensitive of a record, you know. And you hear this record on the radio, and then Jim Jones, you know, jumps on the remix, and it's like this generation, I think, is their ideas of hip hop and the ideas of street credibility, and those images are starting to melt away and fade away. And I think it's because they're just following what's happening in the streets. It's someone coming off all hard and gangster, you know, like the term real gangsters move in silence, I think is starting to be applied a little bit more, where it's like all that posturing and posing is you know, it used to work before it got on TV, you know, and now we see it on TV. And I saw an episode of Flight of the Conchords last week, right? Which is like my favorite show, right? And Brett had wrote a rap. This is all the rappers. He said, Most Def, it's not very good. Missy Elliott, it's not very good. Snoop Dogg, it's not very good. So then he wrote this rap, and then he was scared that all the rappers was gonna come kill him. Right? That's what happened, right? And so he forms a gang, right? He gets his people in his building, his neighborhood, to form a gang and stuff. And his man is talking, his man Dave, one of his best friends is talking to him. And he's like, well, who'd you make a, he's like, well, it depends on who you diss. Who'd you diss? He's like, oh man, I dissed Snoop Dogg. He's like, you dissed Snoop Dogg? He's like, man, he was the horse in racing stripes. You don't want to mess with that dude. So it's like, it's to the point where the images is just, you know, we see through it at this point. You know what I'm saying? It's entertainment. Like with the 50 Cent Rick Ross thing, like, or with Rick Ross, like, people found out Rick Ross used to be a corrections officer. And I was like, oh my God, how could it be gangster Rick Ross who I know the real Noriega? You a CO. How could that be? Right? And it's like, Rick Ross said, nah, I was never a CO, those was lies, fake pictures. Then he came out and said, nah, I used to be a CO. I was lying. But no one cared. 5 years ago, imagine 50 Cent came out, it was like, you found out he used to be a cop, right? It would have smashed his career. But I think at this point, people just realize, look, if you really thought Rick Ross was a real drug dealer that really knew Noriega, then that's your fault. Like we see through it at this point.
We have a question down here. My question is, I mean, there's been political rap ever since rap started. I mean, it's more of an extreme point of view. You know, Dead Prez says it's not the White House, it's a crack house. You know, there's NWA and Public Enemy. But my question is why are the political views of, they say, conscious rappers like yourself, like a Nas, like a Common, why are their political views getting more credence as opposed to, you know, the people who came before them? And I know I still listen to that. Dead Prez is one of my favorites. But, you know, like, why are their political views not necessarily being pushed aside, but not given as much of the same, I guess, I don't know, consideration as,
Like who were you saying?
just
pub-
like Public Enemy. I mean, NWO, you said they were a response to a movement, but you know, everybody's had political views, KRS-One, like, and they've all voiced them in songs. I mean, I know most of them came out before, I mean, I was born, I know that, but you know, like, they still had valid political views, and why, I'm trying to say, like, why are the conscientious rappers like Kanye, like yourself, getting more credence to what you guys are saying now?
I just think that's just a matter of age. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of those dudes is old. They don't really crib, you know? Like, I'm still, you know, I'm in my prime. I gotta get around, you know? I think that's all that is, you know? I mean, as far as, you know, Ice Cube is one of the most revolutionary artists we've had ever. You know, his transformation as an artist is incredible, and he's somebody who, you know, went from really fiery, revolutionary rhetoric to, okay, remember he had a song called Black Hollywood. Now he is Black Hollywood, you know? Chuck D is, you know, he's on Air America, right? Chuck D's on Air America. He's still very relevant as a speaker and a commentator. Chuck D will come to your school if you pay him, and he'll curse a lot and, you know, do his thing, you know? But you know, as far as, you know, I don't know, I think, you know, as far, I don't know, I think right now is my time, and I don't even think it's my time. I don't even think I'm the new, fresh rapper, you know? I think I'm trying to head more towards classic. That's where I'm trying to go. Like, there's new kids who are fresher than me, man. Like, they faster and they fresher. And that's who y'all gonna be inviting to y'all school soon.
Yeah, one down here.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for coming. My question is regarding, I was talking to a friend of mine a while back. We were talking about hip hop, and he said to me that hip hop was one of the most destructive things to the black community. And I didn't really understand what he meant from that. And my thought, but basically where I'm coming from is, how do you think that hip hop has uplifted the community, and how do you think it will? With your conscientious rap, I know you and a lot of other rappers rap differently than the mainstream rap. I just wanted you to provide arguments for why it is not. And just more, well, other than what you clearly said, but just like how hip hop can really change a lot of minds and really mold a lot of young people today.
Yeah, it's hard for me to answer that question, because it would just be hard for me to respond to somebody who said that and said it seriously, you know? Because there's so many positive things about hip hop, just in my own experience, that was flood my brain. That would be hard to just start rattling them off. It's like, okay, you know, it's on a musical level. Listening to hip hop has gotten me into other music. When I was first listening to it, it was very sample heavy, which is not anymore. But you know, I loved it so much, I wanted to know where they got the samples from. Maybe look on the back of records and go get into jazz and funk, and greatly increase my music appreciation and my record collection. My focus on words, hip hop has increased my vocabulary. I mean, I've traveled the entire world. I've been in every country, been everywhere on the strength of rapping, and I've been able to feed my family. I've been able to start a company, and I'm a small fish in this pond. So, anyone who doubts that Obama is a hip hop president is wrong. You know, like he's got a hip hop attitude and energy that comes from being around when hip hop is around. You know, it comes from, and I'll dare say it comes from being black and being around at the time that hip hop was around. But I don't know, that's really a tough one for me, because like, hip hop, they say that hip hop has destroyed the black community is to say that hip hop artists invented the word nigga. You know, it's that type of backwardsness.
All right, we have time for one more. Sorry, she's had her hand up for a long time now. So. Down here.
Hi. So my question is twofold, but when you came on the scene at a really this beautiful time, but also painful because you had to go through, as you so eloquently call, the musical cemetery of America, MCA, when, you know, Rawkus got bought out. And you've actually had to move through being able to be a pure artist when you were with Rawkus and you were part of that absolutely phenomenal movement, and then you moved into now being an entrepreneur and having to deal with the business part of it. And my first question is, can you speak a little bit on that, on the movement from being an artist to being now Blacksmith, and then Blacksmith works now with, I'm not sure which of the label, is it Universal? Warner, I'm sorry, my bad.
It's all the same.
You know, it's one or the other. But yeah, Warner, on that. And then my second point is, and I think you would probably be able to speak more in the tune of, from the perspective of high tech, because I think you've worked with him the most, but we were earlier talking about sampling and how, you know, the law is very restrictive on producers that are putting these beats together for the MC. And I'd love to have him here, but this is fabulous. When high tech, when they are putting together these beats for you guys, do they find themselves very limited by what they can do, and how have you seen it change? Because it has changed so much since exactly you have come on the scene.
Yeah, I got so caught up in your second question, I want you to repeat the first half.
Oh, you as a
Yes,
business person
right.
moving into your...
That's right. I mean, full disclosure, I'm still learning. Because of what I've been able to do, they gave me a label deal. And with my label deal, I signed to my company, Strong Arm Steady from the West Coast, and Gene Gray from New York City. The only thing that's come out through Blacksmith Warner Brothers has been my album, Eardrum. We put out, no, that's not true. We put out an album with a smaller company Warner has called ADA, which is a company that really, they do business on a much smaller scale, so the sample clearance issue is not such a big issue. The album Genius, which was produced entirely by Ninth Wonder, is all samples. Me too. And you know, we just kind of put it out. You know, just kind of put it out and you reach out. You try to clear as many samples as you can on a project like that, on a small project like that. On a major label, my album Eardrum, we had to clear every sample, and it became very expensive. But as far as, you know, I spent a lot of time developing content and product, because that's what I knew how to do. And in the meantime, Warner wasn't putting any sort of heart or resources or energy into anything but me as an artist, and me and Reflection Eternal, me and High Tech. So now our deal with them is just that. Is you know, Gene Gray is still signed there. They Strong Arm Steady is not. I'm putting out Reflection Eternal with Warner. And I'm signed to do Talib Kweli albums with Warner. But my focus is on the business of Blacksmith now, which is why I started the website Year of the Blacksmith. Make sure everybody here become a member of www.yearoftheblacksmith.com. I have stuff up there that y'all all will like, including me and Mos Def's show from last week, and Gene Gray's show from last week, and a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's besides the subject. As far as the sample clearance thing, you know, people should get paid for songs they wrote. You know, one of my best songs that I ever did in my career was a remake of a song called Lonely People, which samples Eleanor Rigby. Right? Now, see, y'all know that song, but the song never came out, ever. It came out on a mixtape, but it was never available. I think, you know, I think that's one of my favorite songs that I've ever done, but Paul McCartney would not clear it. And I could be mad, but it's his damn song. You don't have to clear it. And as an artist, as a musician, I have to respect that. And if you are going to clear it, like, my whole thing is, if I was in a position of one of these older artists, I would say, send it to me. If I liked it, I would clear it, and I would say, just give me my royalties, and that would be it. You know, but and that's what a lot of them do. But you have to go through the process of doing that. And so some of the best producers in our business, because they weren't selling platinum records, you know, it's hard to find outlets for them. If they're just sampling and looping and stuff like that, those days where you could just be a producer that samples and loops, those days are over. Been over for a long time. And producers like Pharrell and Chad, who from the Neptunes, who play a lot of their own stuff, and Dr. Dre, who very early on was just replaying samples and adding his own thing, and Kanye, who actually Kanye started by by selling beats to Jermaine Dupri and Jay-Z to where he could get us enough money to pay for samples. So you hear Kanye West beat and you're like, wow, how did he get that cleared? He paid for it, $100,000, and he gets no publishing on it. But it made him one of the biggest stars in music by him doing this. So sometimes you gotta be forward thinking, not be cheap and penny pinching, understand, use one thing to catapult yourself to something else. I'm sorry about my phone, y'all. I was reading my comments to y'all off my phone, so I couldn't turn it off. I wouldn't normally have my phone go off.
Thank you very much. On behalf of West Virginia University College of Law and West Virginia University, we would like to present you with a coal mountaineer.
It's beautiful that y'all gave this to me. I was already just so overwhelmed by all the love that y'all gave me, but this is just even more. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We would also like to invite you, as far as the College of Law, and Deep Joyce McConnell, who's here, we'd like to recognize her. But also, there's a reception for everyone who came this evening. We are very much appreciative for you being here and participating in the symposium. But we ask that our panelists who are here, if they would please rise and go out that door to be served first, and then the rest of you all after. As well as with the Balsa and the Sports and Entertainment Law Society. Thank you. The reception is sponsored by the Black Law Society.
Professor Cummings?
I got a couple questions for you. One question I did want to ask you is Flavor Flav. Would you consider Flavor Flav to still be a revolutionist, or has he fallen away?
Flavor Flav was never ever a revolutionary. He was never portrayed as one. It was very clear from the beginning of Public Enemy that Flavor Flav was the court jester, and he was meant to balance out the heavy-handed message of PE. So when Flavor Flav is by himself, you can't expect anything but Flavor Flav. It's not the Chuck D Flavor Flav show. It's not the Chuck of love. It's Flavor of love. So that's what it is.
So you never had seen Flavor as a revolutionary from the beginning, or
no, I haven't. I mean, you gotta understand, when Flavor came out, when Public Enemy was out, Flavor was getting arrested for smoking crack and stuff like that.
Yeah, I heard that.
The brother, his job on stage was not to do that. That's what Chuck was for. His job on stage was to entertain, and that showed you that Chuck was revolutionary enough to know that if you're gonna present something on stage with loudspeakers and lights and flashing lights, then you need to add a degree of entertainment. There needs to be a degree of just willing to do whatever for the people that Chuck isn't willing to do.
Okay.
So he brought Flavor.
Now, one other question I want to ask you about your bookstore. Mm-hmm. Is that still in effect, or?
No, Nkiru hasn't been around for years, but it became a program that we do in the high schools. The Nkiru program that helps high school kids organize poetry readings and slams and stuff in their high school.
Well, that's something that I'd like to be able to see here in this area. Mm-hmm. The bookstore, along with conscious DVDs and things of that nature.
Well, everything is more digital now. It's hard to open up a bookstore unless it's a really interactive store. Even a store like Barnes & Noble's, when I was in the bookstore business, went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. No more money. Amazon.com started out as an online bookstore, but now, they're one of the biggest companies in the world. That's because they sell everything and they sell it online. So it's like that's really what we need to focus on is moving in the future, because the idea of having a bookstore or even a record store at this point is antiquated.
Right. See, I seen that as a place where people could come as a social network, particularly in an area like this.
I agree, but it's got to be more interactive. You can't just have a bookstore. It's got to be a bookstore, cafe, that you get computer services, that you get music, like what Barnes & Nobles did. The Barnes & Nobles took the idea of the independent bookstore with the couches and the book readers and cafes and all that, and they homogenized it, and mm-hmm. they came back.
Okay. Now, what would you tell young rappers, young hip-hoppers coming out in terms of socially conscious lyrics where they could provide an answer to some of the life conditions that we go through in terms of the grassroots?
I would just tell artists to be inspired by all types of art. If you're inspired by all types of art, the best art that is revolutionary art. If you look at the artists that define a generation, from your Marvin Gayes to Bob Marley's, it's when they take the approach of representing their community.
That's a good deal. That's a good deal. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it for you. And I got you on my MySpace.
Okay, yes, sir.
We both together.
Yes,
I
sir.
got you on the MySpace.
All right.
Appreciate your work, bro.
No doubt, no doubt.
All right. However,
I don't know if there was any sympathy. I think it was a compromise.